The Grand Counselor Vraxim of the interstellar hegemony stared at the holographic projection with growing horror. The tiny blue-green planet designated as Earth in their archives had broken centuries of silence. "Impossible," he whispered, mandibles clicking nervously. They were quarantined, contained, forgotten. Yet the evidence floated before him. Thousands of primitive but surprisingly effective vessels breaching the quarantine line that had kept humanity isolated for over 3 centuries. The hegemony had placed the Sol system under strict observation after deeming humans too unpredictable, too dangerous to join galactic society. Humans had been judged as uniquely violent, passionate, and worst of all, adaptable beyond reasonable measure. Fleet Admiral Lysandra Blackwood stood on the bridge of the ESS Prometheus, humanity's first true interstellar warship. After discovering the alien monitoring stations around Pluto 60 years ago, Earth had unified like never before. The revelation that advanced alien civilizations existed and had deliberately isolated humanity had transformed centuries of internecine warfare into a singular purpose. "Status report," Lysandra commanded, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a severe bun, eyes that had seen Earth's unification wars now fixed on the stars. Commander Auric, her tactical officer, responded, "Breakthrough complete, Admiral. The alien defense grid is disabled. Our stealth technology worked perfectly. They never saw us coming." "And the colony ships?" she asked. "All 27 have cleared the quarantine line and are proceeding to their designated systems," Auric replied. "Operation Exodus is proceeding exactly as planned." Lysandra allowed herself a small smile. "They thought a simple barrier would hold us. They never understood what isolation does to humans. It doesn't break us. It forces us to innovate." Across the galaxy, on the capital world of the hegemony, Ambassador Krelax burst into the council chambers unannounced. An unprecedented breach of protocol that instantly silenced the 100 assembled representatives of the galaxy's ruling species. "The humans have escaped," he shouted. "They've broken the quarantine." Grand Counselor Vraxim rose slowly from his crystalline throne. "Impossible! The containment field has held for—" "They've developed technology we've never seen," Krelax interrupted. "Ships that can mask their energy signatures, weapons that can penetrate our strongest shields, and worse, they're angry." Murmurs spread across the chamber like wildfire. The decision to quarantine Earth had been made by their predecessors, most of the current council members having only read about humans in historical records. They were considered a curious footnote in galactic history, a promising species deemed too volatile for the delicate balance of the galactic community. "What do they want?" asked Vraxim. "To claim their place among the stars," Krelax replied, his voice trembling. "And they're not asking permission." Meanwhile, far from both Earth and the hegemony capital, the colony ship ESS Defiance approached, an uninhabited world circling a yellow star. Captain Meridian Frost had been chosen to lead humanity's most distant colony, a settlement beyond the reach of the aliens who had imprisoned her species. "Beautiful, isn't it?" asked her second-in-command. "Lieutenant Commander Alistair. Our new home." Meridian nodded, thinking of the thousands of colonists in stasis below decks. "Project Diaspora begins here. While the hegemony deals with our formal introduction, we'll be establishing ourselves across 50 star systems." "They'll try to stop us," Alistair warned. "They had their chance to welcome us peacefully," Meridian replied, her eyes hard. "Now they'll learn what humans do when backed into a corner." On Earth, President Riker addressed the United Earth Council as news of the successful breach spread across the planet, his words broadcast to billions of citizens. "Today, humanity has reclaimed its destiny. We go to the stars not as conquerors, but as explorers who will not be denied. The species that imprisoned us will soon discover they've made the greatest mistake in their history. They gave humanity time to prepare." The Hegemony War Council convened in emergency session for the first time in 700 years. Representatives From the 12 dominant species formed a circle of agitated tension, their translators working overtime as they argued over the human situation. "We must crush them immediately," insisted Gelvox, the militant representative of the Ardani collective. His crystalline exoskeleton glittered under the chamber lights. "Their expansion violates every principle of our ordered galaxy, scholar." Nymetha of the ancient Folians adjusted her gravity harness before speaking. "That would be most unwise. Our ancestors quarantined them for good reason. Human physiology is concerning. They evolved on a death world. They can survive radiation, levels that would kill most of us. Their endurance is unmatched. Some can run for days without stopping." "Myths and exaggerations," scoffed Gelvox. "I've studied the original containment reports," Nymetha continued. "Humans heal from injuries that would be fatal to us. Their psychological profile is even more troubling. They thrive on challenge. Each obstacle we place before them will only make them stronger." Aboard the ESS Prometheus, Admiral Lysandra received the first diplomatic transmission from the hegemony. She sat in her quarters, studying the alien representative's features. A vaguely insectoid being with compound eyes and a translator device affixed to what she assumed was its throat. "Humans of Earth," the message began, "your violation of the Quarantine Accord is a serious breach of galactic law. Return to your solar system immediately, and we may negotiate terms for limited supervised exploration." Lysandra laughed, a sharp, cold sound. She dictated her response carefully. "The Quarantine Accord was imposed without our knowledge or consent. Humanity rejects its authority. We have already established colonies beyond your reach. We seek neither conflict nor domination, but we will defend our right to exist among the stars." On Colony World Horizon, Dr. Azari Voss stood atop a ridge overlooking the landing site of the ESS Defiance. The atmospheric processors were already transforming the alien air, and the first structures of what would become New Olympus City were taking shape below. "Our first independent human world," said Azari to Colonel Vero, who stood beside her. "Within a year, we'll be self-sufficient." Vero nodded, hand resting on his sidearm. "The hegemony won't simply accept this. Their scouts will find us eventually." "That's why we're building the defense grid first," Azari replied, "and why every colonist was chosen not just for their skills but for their resolve. Every person down there understands we might need to fight for our existence." Back on Earth, in the subterranean labs of the Adaptive Technologies Division, Dr. Kieran Webb presented his findings to the United Earth Defense Council. The holographic display showed dissected alien technology recovered from the observation. "Posts around Pluto." "Their tech is elegant, efficient, and utterly predictable," Kieran explained. "The hegemony has been stable for so long that innovation has stagnated. They haven't faced a genuine threat in millennia." General Inara Maddox leaned forward. "And our advantages?" "We're adaptable," Kieran said. "Where they perfect a single approach, we create 12 alternatives. Our technology is crude by their standards, but we implement solutions they'd never consider. We've reverse-engineered their communication systems, their propulsion technology, even their weapons, and we've already improved them." At the edge of settled space, the Hegemony Border Patrol vessel Orderly Progress detected an anomaly, a small, unregistered craft approaching their territory. Captain Zelfix ordered the standard warning transmitted, expecting the vessel to change course. Instead, the craft accelerated, its primitive engines straining as it headed directly toward them. "Impossible," Zelfix muttered. "Their ship is inferior. They must understand we could destroy them with a single volley." The human vessel, little more than a modified transport, showed no signs of slowing. When it was within range, Zelfix reluctantly gave the order to disable it. The patrol ship's weapons charged, then fired, passing harmlessly through empty space. The human vessel had somehow disappeared. "Where did they go?" Zelfix demanded. The answer came seconds later as the small craft reappeared directly alongside them, attaching itself to their hull with primitive but effective magnetic clamps. Their security systems registered multiple hull breaches as the humans forced their way aboard. "They're boarding us?" Zelphix's second-in-command asked in disbelief. That's not how space combat works." But the humans neither knew nor cared about the established protocols of interstellar conflict. They were writing their own rules now. The Hegemony High Command received the disturbing reports with growing alarm. In just 6 standard months, humans had established footholds in 12 star systems. Their expansion was haphazard by hegemony standards, disorganized, lacking the careful ecological assessment and cultural integration protocols that had guided galactic development for millennia, yet it was undeniably effective. "They adapt to new environments with shocking speed," reported Science Director Thulos. The avian alien's feathers ruffled in distress as she displayed ecological data. "Environments we classified as marginally habitable, they transform within months. They accept hardship that our species would consider intolerable." Minister of Defense. Kelrad slammed his appendage against the table. "We've lost contact with 6 monitoring stations and 2 patrol vessels. Their tactics make no sense. They ignore strategic targets to capture our communication relays. They salvage technology we would consider obsolete, and they prioritize establishing colonies over military conquest. Because they're playing a longer game than we anticipated," Grand Counselor Vraxim realized. "They don't want to defeat us. Militarily, they want to establish themselves so thoroughly across the galaxy that removing them becomes impossible." On the frontier world of Proxima Prime, humanity's closest colony to Earth, Governor Alara Kwan mediated a first contact situation unlike any other in human history. Before her stood representatives of the Novel, a non-hegemony species that had lived in the shadow of the powerful Alliance for generations. "Your arrival changes everything," said Geridian, the Novel envoy. His translucent skin pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that supplemented his speech. "The hegemony has controlled interstellar travel for 12,000 years. They deemed our species too unpredictable for unrestricted spaceflight." "Sounds familiar," Ilara said with a wry smile. "What exactly are you proposing?" "Alliance," Geridian replied simply. "The Novel are not alone. There are 17 species the hegemony has restricted to their home, systems, or limited territories. We've watched your expansion with great interest. You've achieved in months what we thought impossible." Ilara leaned forward. "The hegemony will call this a rebellion." "They called your escape a violation," Geridian countered. "Yet here you stand. Our scientists have technologies that would complement yours. Our navigators know routes through space. The hegemony has forgotten." Across the void, aboard the captured hegemony vessel now renamed ESS Audacity, Commander Auric led a team of engineers in repurposing the alien technology. What the hegemony had built for peaceful scientific observation, humans quickly adapted for more versatile applications. "Their sensor array can be modified to detect their stealth ships," explained Chief Engineer Vega, her hands moving deftly over the alien interface she'd hacked. "They never considered anyone would use their own technology against them." Auric nodded. "How soon before we can deploy this to the defense grid at New Olympus?" 2 weeks, Vega replied. "Faster if we can get those Novel engineers the governor mentioned. Apparently, they've been studying hegemony tech for centuries, just waiting for a chance to break free. Meanwhile, on the hegemony throne world Celestis, an unprecedented meeting took place. Grand Counselor Vraxim met privately with the legendary Archivists of Memory, keepers of the full history of galactic civilization. "Tell me what our ancestors knew about humans that we have forgotten," Vraxim demanded. The ancient archivist's form shimmered, partly physical, partly energy. The quarantine was not just for the galaxy's protection, but for theirs. Humans were not always confined to Earth. "What?" Vraxim's compound eyes widened. Humanity once controlled a modest interstellar empire before the Great Collapse. They were quarantined not because they were primitives, but because they were recovering from a catastrophic war that reduced them to their homeworld alone. The quarantine was established to give them time to recover without the interference of more advanced races. "That's impossible," Vraxim whispered. "Our records would show—" "The records were deliberately obscured," the archivist interrupted. "Those who established the quarantine feared that if humans rebuilt too quickly, remembered too soon, they might seek vengeance for their losses in the ancient war." "Against whom?" Vraxim asked. "Against those who now form the ruling council of the hegemony," came the devastating reply. On Earth, deep in the Adaptive Technologies Division, Dr. Kieran Webb made a breakthrough that would change the course of the brewing conflict. Studying an ancient artifact recovered from beneath the Martian surface, one that predated human civilization, he realized it matched components in the hegemony ships. "This isn't just similar," he told General Maddox. "It's identical. This technology wasn't alien to humans. It was ours, from before the Great Collapse." General Maddox stared at the artifact. "You're saying we had this level of technology before? That we've been reinventing what we once mastered?" "I'm saying," Kieran replied gravely, "that we weren't quarantined to keep us in. We were quarantined to keep us from remembering who we used to be." The human diplomatic vessel ESS Emissary entered. The neutral space of Vega Station, where representatives from 23 species had gathered, the largest assembly of non-hegemony races in recorded history. Ambassador Orrin Ravencroft strode through the alien concourse with practiced confidence, though this was humanity's first formal diplomatic engagement with the wider galaxy. "The hegemony representatives are refusing to attend," his aide, diplomatic, Officer Freya, informed him. "They've declared this gathering illegitimate." "Of course they have," Orrin replied. "We're upending the power structure they've maintained for thousands of years. Proceed as planned." Inside the Grand Assembly Chamber, Orrin addressed the gathered representatives. Species of all descriptions, some humanoid, others utterly alien, listened, as translation devices converted his words to their native tongues. "For too long, the hegemony has decided which species may travel the stars, and which must remain confined to their homeworlds. Humanity was imprisoned on Earth, told we were too violent, too unpredictable for galactic society. We now know this was a lie." He activated a holographic display showing the artifacts Dr. Kieran had discovered. "These are human technologies, dating back 15,000 years. Before the hegemony existed, humanity had reached the stars. We were not quarantined because we were primitive. We were quarantined because we were recovering." The assembly erupted in astonished discussion. The representative of the aquatic Melosians raised a tentacle. "What are you proposing, human?" "An alliance," Orrin replied, "not dominated by any single species, but a true coalition. The hegemony maintains power by keeping advanced technology in the hands of a few. We offer to share what we've discovered, and to help each of your peoples reclaim your own forgotten histories. On the front lines of expanding human territory, Admiral Lysandra's fleet intercepted a hegemony battle group attempting to blockade New Olympus. The hegemony vessels were larger, more elegant, their technology refined over thousands of years. Of peace. They're demanding our immediate surrender, Commander Auric reported. "Open a channel," Lysandra ordered. When the alien commander's image appeared, she spoke with calm authority. "You've entered human space uninvited. Withdraw immediately." "Human space? This system falls under hegemony protection," the alien commander replied. "Your illegal colonies will be dismantled and your people returned to Earth." "We prefer to negotiate peacefully," Lysandra said, "but we will defend what's ours." "You have primitive vessels adapted from stolen technology," the commander scoffed. "You cannot hope to—" Lysandra cut the transmission. Deploy the Novel shield disruptors. Target their propulsion systems only. The human fleet moved with surprising speed, executing maneuvers the hegemony ships couldn't match. Where the aliens fought with textbook precision, humans improvised, using the environment of space itself, hiding behind moons, using gravity, wells to enhance their weapons' impacts. Most shocking to the hegemony forces was that the humans deliberately avoided fatalities. They disabled rather than destroyed, captured rather than killed. "Why do they spare us?" questioned a hegemony officer as his disabled vessel drifted. "Because," his captain replied grimly, "they want witnesses." Back on Earth, President Riker authorized a bold operation based on Dr. Kieran's discoveries. Beneath the surface of Mars, a human-led coalition of engineers from 7 species worked to excavate what they now knew was not just a random deposit of ancient technology, but a deliberate vault. Dr. Izari Voss, recalled from New Olympus 4, this critical mission stood before the massive sealed door they'd uncovered. According to the translations, this was sealed 15,000 years ago by humans to be opened when we returned to Mars. "Can you open it?" asked Kieran. Izari placed her hand on the door's sensor panel. For a moment, nothing happened. Then ancient machinery hummed to life, recognizing human DNA after 15 millennia of dormancy. "It was waiting for us," she whispered, as the massive doors began to part. Inside, they discovered not weapons or technology, but knowledge. A repository of human history before the Great Collapse. Holographic displays activated automatically, showing images of a human civilization that had once spanned hundreds of worlds. "We weren't just spacefaring," Kieran said in awe. "We were a foundational species of galactic civilization." The recordings revealed the truth that had been hidden. Humanity had not been confined to Earth by the hegemony. They had been driven back to their homeworld after a devastating interstellar war. A war they had nearly won against the combined forces of what would later become the hegemony. They feared us, Izari realized. Even broken and defeated, they feared what we might become if we remembered our past. "And now we have," Kieran said. "The question is, what do we do with this knowledge?" The Hegemony Council chambers had never witnessed such chaos. Representatives argued bitterly as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Humans establishing outposts in abandoned systems, forming alliances with restricted species, uncovering ancient caches of knowledge and technology. "They must be stopped," insisted Defense Minister Kelrad. "Every day they grow stronger. They've already disabled 3 of our battle groups without a single fatality." "Perhaps," ventured a voice rarely heard in council debates, "we should consider negotiation." All eyes turned to Elder Zorix, representative of the Valthorian Enclave, one of the founding species of the hegemony. The ancient being's crystalline form shimmered as he continued. "I was there, 15,000 years ago, when we drove the humans back to their homeworld and established the quarantine. I voted for it then, believing it necessary for galactic stability." Murmurs of surprise rippled through the chamber. Few had realized any living being remembered those events. "We told ourselves we were protecting the galaxy from human aggression," Zorix continued. "But we were protecting ourselves from human innovation. In the centuries they've been isolated, look what they've accomplished. They've rebuilt their civilization from ruins. And now, in mere months, they've expanded to dozens of star systems." "What are you suggesting?" Grand Counselor Vraxam asked. "Cautiously, that we accept reality. The quarantine has failed. Humanity has returned to the stars, and this time they've learned from their defeat. They seek allies, not conquests. They disable our ships rather than destroy them. They offer technology and knowledge to species we've restricted. They undermine our authority," protested Kelrad. "An authority perhaps we never should have claimed," Zorix replied softly. At the edge of explored space, beyond the reach of either human or hegemony influence, the ESS Pathfinder made a discovery that would forever change the galaxy's future. Captain Nadia Reeves stared at the sensor readings in disbelief. "Confirm these findings," she ordered. "Confirmed, Captain," replied Science Officer Malik. "The energy signature matches the ancient records recovered from Mars. It's definitely a human installation, dormant for approximately 15,000 years. Before them hung an artificial structure the size of a small moon, a way station on humanity's ancient interstellar network. As they approached, automated systems recognized their ship's human life signs and began activating long-dormant systems. It's a nexus point," Malik explained, reading the data now streaming to their computers. "A junction in a transportation network that once connected human worlds across the galaxy. There are hundreds of these, Captain, spanning territories, now claimed by dozens of species. And they all recognize human genetic signatures," Nadia realized. "The founding species of the hegemony didn't just defeat humanity. They built their empire on top of our forgotten network. On Earth, a summit unlike any in human history convened. President Riker had invited representatives from both the coalition of free species, humanity's growing alliance, and the hegemony itself. To everyone's surprise, Grand Counselor Vraxim had accepted. Admiral Lysandra, now promoted to fleet commander, stood beside President Riker as the hegemony delegation approached. The tension in the room was palpable. "Welcome to Earth, President," Riker said formally. "We appreciate your willingness to meet on our homeworld." Vraxim bowed slightly, a gesture his species rarely offered. "Recent events have challenged many of our assumptions. We have reviewed the historical records you shared. They match our own sealed archives. Then you acknowledge that humanity was not quarantined for the protection of the galaxy, but to prevent us from reclaiming our heritage," Riker stated. "Yes," Vraxim admitted. "Actions taken by our ancestors that we inherited without questioning their foundation. A mistake spanning millennia." Lysandra stepped forward. "While we appreciate this acknowledgement, words alone cannot address the injustice done to humanity or to the many other species restricted by hegemony decree." "We are prepared to offer reparations," Vraxim began. "We're not interested in concessions," President Riker interrupted. "We're interested in transformation. Your Council of 12 Species has dominated hundreds of others for too long. That era is ending." He gestured toward the holographic display, showing the ancient human nexus point discovered by the Pathfinder. "With this network reactivated, the artificial boundaries you've enforced can no longer stand. We propose a new galactic charter, one where all spacefaring species have equal voice." "You would dismantle 12,000 years of order?" Vraxim asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "We would replace imposed order with genuine cooperation," Riker replied. "Your species will maintain your territories and independence, but the era of hegemony dominance is over." Vraxim looked from the human leaders to the assembled representatives of the coalition species. "And if we refuse?" Admiral Lysandra answered. "We've activated 3 nexus points already. Within a year, we can reactivate them all. The technology that gave your ancestors dominance will be available to everyone. You can fight this change or help shape it." 3 months later, aboard the restored Nexus station now named Unity, representatives from 97 spacefaring species, including all 12 hegemony powers, signed the Galactic Concord. The largest diplomatic gathering in known history, celebrated the beginning of a new era. Ambassador Oren watched as species that had been enemies for millennia formalized peace treaties. Races that had been restricted to their homeworlds prepared for their first voyages to the stars. And humanity, once isolated, once forgotten, stood at the center of it all. "Was this your plan all along?" asked Elder Zorix, now representing The Valthorians in the new Concord Council. Not a plan, Orin replied thoughtfully. An inevitability. You tried to make humanity forget what we were. Instead, you gave us time to become something new. Across the galaxy, on Colony World Horizon, Dr. Izari Voss stood with Governor Alara Kwan, watching the city of New Olympus grow beneath twin setting suns. The Concord's founding had been broadcast across all settled worlds, signaling the dawn of a new age. When we broke the quarantine, I expected war, Izari admitted. I never imagined this. That was their mistake too, Ilara replied with a smile. They quarantined us expecting us to remain violent, unpredictable conquerors. Instead, we became builders, explorers, diplomats. And now the galaxy is ours again, Izari said. Not ours alone, Ilara corrected her. That was the old way of thinking, the way that led to the Great Collapse. This time, we share the stars. As night fell on humanity's newest world, ships from a dozen species entered orbit, welcomed by the descendants of a civilization that had refused to remain forgotten. The galaxy's oldest power had returned, not seeking vengeance for ancient wrongs, but offering a future where no species would ever again be denied their place among the stars. Human persistence, adaptability, and innovation, qualities that had once made them feared, had transformed them into the architects of a new galactic order. The aliens had indeed realized too late that humans were the galaxy's forgotten power, but humanity had realized something far more important, that true power lies not in domination, but in bringing light to the darkest corners of the universe. Together,